I gave my parents a luxurious one-week trip to Europe with me. When I picked them up to go to the airport, they told me they decided to go with my jobless sister instead. My mother smiled. Your sister needed some rest, so we decided to take her. And then they had a big surprise when they landed in Europe. The morning sunlight filtered through my curtains as I triple-checked my suitcase. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, 7 days across 3 countries, all planned down to the last detail. I'd spent months arranging this trip, working overtime to afford the luxury hotels and Michelin-starred restaurants. My parents had sacrificed so much raising me, and I wanted to give them the vacation of a lifetime. I arrived at their house at 5 in the morning, my trunk already loaded with carefully wrapped gifts I'd purchased for them to open during the flight. Champagne for the hotel rooms? Printed itineraries in leather folders. My heart was pounding with excitement as I rang the doorbell. My father, Gerald, opened the door with an expression I couldn't quite read. Behind him, my mother Lorraine stood with her arms crossed, and my younger sister Brielle was pulling a designer suitcase I'd never seen before. "What's going on?" I asked, my smile faltering. Lorraine stepped forward, her voice bright and cheerful. "Sweetheart, we've made a small change to the plans. Your sister needed some rest, so we decided to take her instead." The words hit me like ice water. "What? You understand, don't you?" Gerald said, not meeting my eyes. "Brielle's been through so much lately. She needs this more than you do." Brielle had been going through so much for the past 3 years, which translated to quitting every job within weeks and living rent-free in my parents' basement. At 32, she'd never held employment for longer than 4 months. Meanwhile, I'd been working 60-hour weeks as a senior financial analyst, clawing my way up from an entry-level position. "I planned this trip," I said slowly, my hands starting to shake. "I paid for everything. The tickets are in my name." "We'll pay you back," Lorraine said dismissively, though we both knew that would never happen. "Don't be selfish about this. Family helps family." Brielle smirked at me from behind our mother, her eyes glittering with triumph. She'd always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong despite doing absolutely nothing right. I'd learned to accept the inequality growing up, but this felt like a bridge too far. "The tickets are non-transferable," I lied, my mind racing. "Brielle can't use them." "Oh, don't worry about that," Brielle said sweetly. "I called the airline yesterday. They said we could pay a change fee. Mom and Dad already gave me the money." My jaw clenched. They'd been planning this behind my back. The betrayal burned through my chest like acid. "When did you decide this?" I asked. "A few days ago," Lorraine admitted. "We didn't want to upset you, but Brielle really needs a break. You're strong. You'll be fine." I stared at the 3 of them standing in the doorway of my childhood home, and something inside me crystallized into diamond-hard resolve. I smiled, and it must have looked genuine because my mother's shoulders relaxed. "You're right," I said quietly. "Brielle needs this more than I do. Let me help you with your bags." The ride to the airport was silent. I didn't trust myself to speak without screaming. I helped them check in, watched them go through security, and waved goodbye with that same frozen smile plastered across my face. The moment they disappeared from view, I pulled out my phone. 3 calls later, everything was in motion. The first call went to the hotel in Paris, the 5-star property overlooking the Eiffel Tower where I'd booked the penthouse suite. "I need to cancel the reservation under the name Lorraine Mitchell," I said calmly. "Certainly, ma'am. However, the cancellation fee will be..." "I'm aware. Please process it immediately and refund the balance to my card." The second call went to the Rome hotel, then the Barcelona hotel. Same conversation, same result. The third call went to my credit card company. "I need to report my card as lost and request an immediate replacement with a new number." By the time their plane touched down in Paris 8 hours later, every reservation I'd made had been cancelled. The hotel bookings, the restaurant reservations, the private tour guides, the cooking class in Rome, the flamenco show in Barcelona, all of it, gone. I sat in my apartment, staring at the confirmation emails flooding my inbox. Each cancellation felt like cutting another thread that had tied me to their expectations. The cooking class cancellation came with a polite note from the instructor, hoping everything was all right. The private guide in Rome sent a concerned message asking if I needed to reschedule. These strangers showed more consideration for my well-being than my own family had. My best friend from college, Natasha, called around noon. "Aren't you supposed to be on a plane right now?" "Change of plans," I said, and told her everything. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Are you kidding me?" Your own parents? Brielle needed rest, apparently. From doing absolutely nothing. What are you going to do? I already did it. Cancelled everything. They're going to land in Paris with nowhere to stay and no plans. Natasha let out a low whistle. That's savage. I love it. Want to come over? We can drink wine and watch them panic in real time. I did go over, bringing 2 bottles of expensive Bordeaux I planned to share with my parents in their hotel room. Natasha's apartment in Capitol Hill had a balcony with mountain views, and we sat outside in the September sunshine, glasses in hand. You know what kills me? I said, watching clouds drift past the peaks. I spent 6 months planning this. I researched every restaurant, read reviews for hours, learned basic French phrases. I bought my mom a new dress for the fancy dinners. I got my dad a leather journal because he mentioned wanting to write about his travels. Everything was supposed to be perfect. They don't deserve you, Natasha said firmly. They never have. Remember your college graduation? When Brielle threw that tantrum because she wasn't the center of attention. I did remember. Brielle had been 19, upset that our parents were making a fuss over my summa cum laude achievement. She'd locked herself in the bathroom at the restaurant and refused to come out until Lorraine went in and spent 30 minutes comforting her. My graduation dinner had been cut short so they could take Brielle home. Or your promotion party last year, Natasha continued. When your mom spent the whole time talking about how worried she was about Brielle finding herself. That memory stung worse. I'd finally made senior analyst, beating out candidates with more experience. I'd invited my parents to the celebration dinner my company threw, and Lorraine had cornered my boss to ask if there were any entry-level positions for Brielle, who just quit her job at a coffee shop because the manager was mean for expecting her to show up on time. I kept thinking it would change, I admitted. That eventually they'd see I was working hard, being responsible, making something of myself. That it would matter to them. It does matter. They just took it for granted. You were the easy child, so they focused on the squeaky wheel. Well, the easy child just became extremely difficult. Natasha clinked her glass against mine. Good. It's about damn time. I knew the exact moment they discovered the truth because my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I answered. Lorraine's voice was shrill with panic. The hotel is saying they don't have our reservation. That's strange, I said, examining my nails. Did you try calling them before you left the airport? We tried from the taxi. They're saying it was cancelled this morning. We're standing in the lobby with our luggage and they're telling us we have nothing booked. Huh? Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're resourceful people. What did you do? Brielle's voice cut in, apparently I was on speakerphone. This is your fault. How could it be my fault? I'm in Denver. You're in Paris. Besides, you wanted this trip so badly. I'm sure you saved up for accommodations. The silence stretched out long enough that I almost laughed. You can't do this to us, Gerald said, his voice hard. We're your parents. And Brielle is my sister. Family helps family, right? I'm sure she has a credit card for emergencies. Good luck. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately, but I powered it off and tossed it onto my couch. For the next 7 days, I lived my best life. I'd already requested the time off work, so I had a full week stretching ahead of me. I went to the spa. I visited the art museum. I had dinner with my friend Kelsey, who'd been begging me to go out for months, but I'd always been too busy with work or family obligations. You actually turned your phone off? Kelsey asked, her eyes wide over her martini glass. Completely off. They made their choice. They can deal with the consequences. What do you think they're doing over there? I shrugged, though I'd given it plenty of thought. With no hotel reservations and no restaurant bookings, they'd be scrambling to find last-minute accommodations in peak tourist season. Everything would be either booked solid or outrageously expensive. The irony was delicious, they'd wanted a European vacation, and now they were getting the authentic broke backpacker experience. Day 2 of my unexpected staycation, I woke up without an alarm for the first time in months. The September sun streamed through my bedroom window, and I lay there luxuriating in the silence. No emails demanding immediate attention. No family obligations. Just peace. I treated myself to breakfast at the French bakery downtown, the one I'd been meaning to try but never had time for. The croissants were buttery perfection, and I sat by the window watching people rush past on their way to work while I savored every flaky bite. A couple at the next table was planning their own trip to Europe, and I bit my tongue to keep from laughing at the irony. My phone was still off, sitting in a drawer at home. The freedom from constant notifications felt intoxicating. I couldn't remember the last time I'd gone a full day without checking work emails or responding to family group chat messages, which were usually just Brielle complaining about something. The Denver Art Museum was hosting a new contemporary exhibit I'd wanted to see. I spent 3 hours wandering through galleries, actually reading the plaques and sitting with paintings that moved me. There was a piece about family dynamics, a fractured mirror reflecting distorted images, that hit uncomfortably close to home. But instead of running from the discomfort, I sat with it, processing decades of resentment I'd been swallowing. In the museum cafe, I struck up a conversation with an older woman who was sketching one of the sculptures. Her name was Ruth, and she was a retired art teacher. "You look troubled, dear," she said, her pencil never stopping its movement across the page. "Family issues," I said vaguely. "The worst kind. Let me guess, you're the responsible one who everyone takes for granted?" I laughed, startled by her accuracy. "Is it that obvious? I have 3 children. 2 of them call regularly, remember my birthday, visit on holidays. The third calls when he needs money. Guess which one I spent most of my energy on when they were growing up? The third one." "Exactly. Biggest mistake of my life? I thought I was helping him, but I was really just teaching him that he didn't need to try because mom would always bail him out." Meanwhile, my other 2 learned they had to fend for themselves. She looked up from her sketch, her eyes kind but knowing. "It took me years to figure out that love isn't just about giving. Sometimes it's about letting people face the consequences of their choices." "What made you realize it?" "My daughter, the eldest, the responsible one, stopped talking to me for 6 months. Just went completely silent. No explanation, no angry calls, nothing. When she finally agreed to meet me for coffee, she told me she was tired of being invisible while I obsessed over her brother's latest crisis. She said she'd accomplished so much in her life, and I'd never once acknowledged it because I was too busy worrying about him." The words resonated in my chest like a struck bell. "What did you do?" "I changed. Not overnight, real change never is. But I started seeing my other children, really seeing them. Started celebrating their successes instead of taking them for granted. And I told my son that the bank of mom was closed. He had to figure things out on his own." "How did he react?" "Poorly at first. He accused me of not loving him anymore. But eventually, he got a steady job. Met a nice girl. Learned to stand on his own feet. Turns out he was capable all along, I'd just never given him reason to try." Ruth tore the sketch from her pad and handed it to me. It was the sculpture, but she'd added shadows and light that weren't visible in the actual piece, making it somehow more real than the original. "For you," she said. A reminder that sometimes we have to redraw the picture ourselves. I left the museum with the sketch rolled carefully in my bag and Ruth's words echoing in my mind. That night, I took myself to dinner at an upscale steakhouse I'd always walked past but never entered. The hostess sat me at a table with a view of the city lights, and I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu without checking the price first. The businessman at the next table kept glancing over, and eventually he asked, "Celebrating something?" "My independence," I said, raising my wine glass. He laughed and raised his own glass in salute. "I'll drink to that." Day 3, I drove into the mountains. Aspen leaves were turning gold, creating corridors of shimmering light along the highway. I hiked to a waterfall I'd heard about from coworkers but never visited, and sat on a boulder eating the expensive cheese and crackers I'd packed. 2 other hikers, a mother and daughter from Texas, shared their trail mix with me, and we talked about everything and nothing while the waterfall thundered behind us. "You here alone?" the mother asked. "By choice," I said, and realized I meant it. That evening, back in the city, I met Kelsey and Natasha for dinner. They coordinated their schedules to make sure I wasn't alone if I didn't want to be, which was the kind of thoughtfulness my family had never shown. "Any regrets?" Natasha asked as we shared a dessert sampler. "About canceling everything? Not even a little bit." "What about when they come back? They're going to be furious." "Let them be furious. I'm done caring more about their feelings than they care about mine." Kelsey squeezed my hand across the table. "Good for you. Seriously. I've watched you bend over backwards for them for years. It's about time you put yourself first." Day 4 dawned rainy and gray, perfect weather for the indoor climbing gym I'd been wanting to try. I'd always been afraid of heights, but something about the week had made me want to push my boundaries. The instructor, a patient guy named Tyler, taught me the basics and encouraged me up the wall. "Don't look down," he called. "Focus on the next handhold. Just the next one. Good advice for climbing? Good advice for life. I made it halfway up before my arms gave out, but the small victory felt enormous. When I let go and the harness caught me, I was laughing, adrenaline singing through my veins. You're a natural, Tyler said as I touched down. Most beginners won't even try that route. I'm feeling brave this week. Whatever the reason, channel it. Courage looks good on you. On day 4, I turned my phone back on. The avalanche of notifications was almost comical. 73 missed calls. 46 voicemails. Text messages that filled my screen with previews of rage and desperation. I made coffee before listening to any of them, settling into my couch with a notepad to take notes like I was preparing for a business meeting. The first voicemail was Lorraine, her voice sharp and demanding, "Call us back immediately. The hotel says our reservation was cancelled. This is unacceptable. Fix it now." The second was Gerald, "Your mother is very upset. Whatever game you're playing, it needs to stop. We're your parents. You don't treat us this way." Brielle's voice on the third message was shrill, "I can't believe you're doing this. We're stuck in Paris with nowhere to stay. Mom is crying and it's all your fault." I deleted them one by one, taking satisfaction in pressing the button. Their words couldn't touch me anymore. I'd built walls during my week of freedom, and they were solid. The messages progressed from angry to desperate. By message 15, they'd spend a night in a youth hostel near Gare du Nord. Brielle described the experience in horrified detail: bunk beds, shared bathrooms, other travelers who snored and came in drunk at 2 a.m. There were bed bugs. She wailed in message 23. "I have bites all over my legs. This is abuse." Message 30 was Lorraine, her voice smaller, "Please, sweetheart, just call us back. We need to talk about this. We can work something out." But it was message 38 that made me pause. Gerald's voice was thick, like he'd been crying. "I'm looking at the bill from the hotel we finally found. It's €400 a night. We can't afford this. We're going to have to cut the trip short. Your mother won't stop crying, and Brielle is threatening to fly home early. Please, if you ever loved us, help us fix this." I saved that one. Not out of guilt, but as a reminder that actions had consequences, even for parents who thought they were immune to them. On day 4, I turned my phone back on. 73 missed calls. 46 voicemails. Countless text messages that ranged from pleading to outright hostile. The voicemails were particularly enlightening. The first few were angry, demanding I fix this immediately. Then they shifted to desperate, apparently they'd spent 2 nights in a youth hostel because everything else was booked. Brielle had complained about bedbugs. Lorraine had been horrified by the shared bathrooms. By day 6, they'd maxed out 2 credit cards trying to salvage what remained of the trip. Gerald had apparently suffered from food poisoning after eating at a questionable street vendor because they couldn't afford decent restaurants. They missed the train to Rome because they couldn't figure out the French rail system without the guide I'd arranged. Barcelona had been cancelled entirely. The final voicemail was from Lorraine, her voice small and defeated. "Please call us back. We just want to come home." I deleted it. When they finally landed back in Denver, I didn't pick them up from the airport. They took a taxi, which probably cost them another chunk of money they didn't have. I waited 3 days before I drove to their house. The wait wasn't just about making them sweat. I needed time to prepare myself emotionally. I drafted what I wanted to say, practiced it in the mirror, anticipated their counterarguments. My colleague Jennifer, who'd been through her own family estrangement, gave me advice over lunch. "Don't let them gaslight you into thinking you're the bad guy," she said, stabbing her salad for emphasis. "They're going to try. They'll say you overreacted, that you were cruel, that family doesn't do this to family. Stand firm." "What if I feel guilty?" "You'll probably feel guilty. You've been trained your whole life to prioritize their feelings. But guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're breaking a pattern, and patterns don't break comfortably." I spent those 3 days documenting everything. I printed out the original itinerary I'd created, complete with costs. I pulled up credit card statements showing the deposits I'd made. I created a spreadsheet of every cancellation and the refund amounts. If they wanted to claim I'd stolen from them, I had receipts proving every dollar had been mine to begin with. My apartment had never been cleaner. I scrubbed floors, organized closets, rearranged furniture, anything to channel the nervous energy coursing through me. Natasha came over the night before I planned to confront them and found me alphabetizing my bookshelf at midnight. "You know you don't have to do this, right?" she said gently. "You could just cut them off. Ghost them. Move to another state and change your number. I thought about it. But I need to say these things out loud. I need them to hear it. Otherwise, I'll always wonder if they could have changed. And if they don't change? Then at least I'll know I tried. The morning I drove to their house, I wore my best suit, the one I bought for presentations to executive management. Armor disguised as business casual. I stopped at Starbucks and got myself a large coffee, no emotional support beverage for them. This wasn't a social call. Their neighborhood looked exactly as it always had: neat lawns, minivans and driveways, basketball hoops above garage doors. I'd grown up 3 blocks from here, in a smaller house they'd sold when I left for college so they could afford a bigger place. I used to think it was because they were proud of my scholarship, wanted to celebrate the next chapter. Later, I realized the timing coincided with Brielle getting her own car, which she'd promptly crashed within 6 months. Lorraine answered the door looking exhausted, her skin blotchy and her eyes red-rimmed. The house smelled stale, like they hadn't opened the windows since returning. "How was your trip?" I asked pleasantly. "You know exactly how it was," she snapped. "What you did was cruel and vindictive." "What I did was cancel my own reservations for a trip I planned and paid for. You're the ones who decided to take it over without asking me. Did you seriously think I'd just let you steal my vacation?" "We didn't steal anything. We're your parents. You owe us." "I don't owe you sabotaging my hard work so Brielle can continue being a leech." I kept my voice level, controlled. "Where is she, by the way?" "In bed. She's been crying for days. She'll get over it. Unlike the thousands of dollars you wasted trying to salvage a trip you had no business taking." Gerald appeared behind Lorraine, his face haggard. He looked older somehow, diminished. "We made a mistake. We're sorry." "Are you? Or are you sorry you got caught?" "Don't speak to your father that way," Lorraine said sharply. "Why not? You've never had a problem with Brielle disrespecting me. She's called me names, borrowed money she never repaid, and now she's stolen a trip I spent months planning. But I'm the problem for standing up for myself?" The truth of it hung in the air between us. My mother's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Here's how this is going to work," I continued. "You're going to apologize, a real apology, not the half-hearted nonsense you just tried. You're going to acknowledge that what you did was wrong. And you're going to start treating me with the same consideration you give Brielle, or I'm done. No more family dinners. No more emergency loans. No more being the reliable daughter while she gets to be the precious baby who can't handle real life." "You can't just cut us off," Lorraine protested weakly. "Watch me. I've spent 30 years being the responsible one, the one who didn't need attention or praise because I was strong enough to handle neglect. I'm finished with that role. Either things change or I walk away." Gerald's face crumpled. For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. "We've been terrible parents to you," he whispered. "You deserved better." Something in my chest loosened slightly. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of it. "Yes, I did," I agreed softly. "And I still do." Brielle emerged from the basement stairs, her hair greasy and tangled, wearing stained sweatpants. She looked at me with pure hatred. "This is all your fault." "No, Brielle. This is the consequence of your choices and their choices. I'm just the person who stopped enabling them." "We treated you like a princess your whole life," Lorraine said to Brielle, her voice cracking. "We gave you everything. And look at you, you're 32 years old with nothing to show for it. No job, no savings, no ambition. Your sister worked for everything she has. We should have made you do the same." Brielle's face went white, then red. "So now you're on her side?" "There are no sides," Gerald said heavily. "There should never have been sides. We failed both of you by playing favorites." I watched my sister process this, saw the moment she realized the dynamic had shifted permanently. She'd lost her champions, and without them propping her up, she'd have to face reality. "I'm going back to bed," she muttered, retreating down the stairs. "No," Gerald called after her. "You're going to get dressed and go to the employment office. Today. This afternoon. You have 2 months to find a job and start contributing to this household, or you find somewhere else to live." The basement door slammed. I heard muffled sobbing through the floor. Lorraine turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Can you forgive us?" "Eventually, maybe. But it's going to take time, and it's going to require actual change. Starting with paying me back every cent you spent on those flights and change fees." "We don't have that kind of money," Gerald admitted. "Then set up a payment plan. $50 a month if that's all you can afford. But you will pay me back, and you will do it without complaint. They both nodded, chastened and small. Before I left, I pulled out the folder I'd prepared, copies of all the receipts, the original itinerary, the costs broken down. I laid it on their coffee table like evidence in a trial. This is what I planned for us, I said, flipping through the pages. A cooking class in a Tuscan villa. A private tour of the Colosseum at sunrise, before the crowds. Front row seats to a flamenco performance in a centuries-old Barcelona theater. I researched every detail for months. I wanted to give you something unforgettable. Lorraine's hand trembled as she touched the papers. We threw this away. You did. For someone who's never appreciated anything she's been given. I closed the folder. I need you to understand what you chose. It wasn't just about the money or the vacation. It was about choosing her again, like you always have. About telling me, once more, that my effort doesn't matter as much as her comfort. We understand now, Gerald said hoarsely. I hope so. Because this is your last chance. If things go back to how they were, I'm gone. I'll move across the country if I have to. I'll change my number. You'll have one daughter instead of two. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. I picked up my purse and walked to the door, but Lorraine's voice stopped me. The bedbugs were horrible, she said quietly. Brielle wouldn't stop complaining. But the worst part was realizing we'd done this to ourselves. Every uncomfortable moment, every overpriced meal, every missed train, it was all because we'd been selfish and thoughtless. And you knew. You knew exactly what would happen to us. I turned back. I knew you'd face the natural consequences of your actions. That's not the same as causing your suffering. You did that yourselves. Will you ever trust us again? The question deserved honesty. I don't know. Trust is earned, and you've spent 3 decades teaching me not to expect much from you. Changing that won't happen overnight. I left their house feeling lighter than I had in years. The drive home took me past the park where Brielle and I used to play as children, back when the favoritism wasn't so obvious, when I still believed my parents loved us equally. I didn't stop to reminisce. But I did notice the old oak tree where we carved our initials one summer, declaring ourselves best friends forever. Brielle had been 7, me 9. She'd looked up to me then, wanted to be like me. I wondered when that had shifted, when admiration had curdled into resentment. My phone buzzed with a text from Kelsey. How did it go? Better than expected, I typed back. They're actually taking accountability. Miracles do happen. Dinner to celebrate? Absolutely. Somewhere expensive. I've got a vacation budget that's burning a hole in my pocket. Because that was the other part of my plan, the money I'd gotten refunded from the cancelled reservations wasn't going to waste. I'd already booked myself a 2-week solo trip to New Zealand for next month. Hiking, wine country, bungee jumping off a bridge because why the hell not? I'd earned it. The next few weeks passed in a strange limbo. My parents sent their first payment of $50 with a note apologizing again. Brielle got the job at the dental office, and according to Lorraine's carefully neutral texts, was adjusting to a schedule. I focused on work, on friends, on planning my New Zealand adventure. My boss, Sandra, called me into her office one Tuesday afternoon. I wanted to check in with you. You've been different lately. More confident, maybe? I can't quite put my finger on it. I set some boundaries in my personal life, I said carefully. It's been liberating. Good. Boundaries are healthy. Listen, I'm putting together a proposal for a new division focused on international markets. I want you to lead it. It would mean more travel, more responsibility, and a significant raise. Interested? 6 months ago, I would have hesitated, worried about leaving my family for business trips, concerned about seeming too ambitious. Now, I didn't hesitate at all. Absolutely. When do we start? Sandra smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. We'll discuss details next week, but I wanted to give you a heads up. You've earned this. Walking out of her office, I felt like I was stepping into a new version of my life. One where I didn't shrink myself to accommodate other people's limitations. One where my success wasn't something to apologize for. That evening, I treated myself to a nice dinner and started researching the international division role. The possibilities stretched ahead like an open road, and for the first time in memory, I wasn't afraid of where it might lead. 3 months passed before I had dinner with my parents again. They'd been sending the $50 payments religiously, along with apologetic texts that I mostly ignored. Brielle had found a job as a receptionist at a dental office, minimum wage, but it was employment. She'd moved out of their basement and into a studio apartment that she complained about constantly on social media. When I finally agreed to meet them at a mid-range Italian restaurant, they arrived early and waited nervously by the hostess stand. Lorraine had clearly made an effort with her appearance, and Gerald wore a button-down shirt I bought him 3 Christmases ago that he'd never worn. Dinner was awkward at first, full of stilted conversation and long silences. But gradually, something shifted. They asked about my work, actually listened to my answers. They wanted to know about my New Zealand trip, which had been incredible. They didn't mention Brielle except to say she was adjusting to independence. "We've started therapy," Lorraine said over dessert. Individual and couples counseling. The therapist helped us see how we've been using Brielle as a way to avoid dealing with our own issues. By keeping her dependent, we felt needed. But we were really just crippling her and alienating you. That must have been hard to hear, I said carefully. It was. It is. But it's true. Gerald reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine. We don't expect you to forgive us right away. We just want you to know we're trying to do better. I let him take my hand. His palm was calloused and warm, familiar from childhood hugs and learning to ride a bike and 1,000 other memories I buried under years of resentment. I can see that, I said. Keep trying. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no dramatic reconciliation with tears and hugs. But it was honest, and that was worth more than any grand gesture. 6 months after the Paris debacle, Brielle called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hey," she said, her voice subdued. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For the trip, for all the years before that, for being a selfish brat. What brought this on? Honestly? Living on my own and realizing how much I took for granted. Mom and Dad told me about the payment plan, about how much money you spent on that trip. I couldn't even afford my rent last month, and you dropped thousands on them without thinking twice. I've been jealous of you my whole life, but I never did anything to earn what you have. It was probably the most self-aware statement I'd ever heard from her. Thank you for saying that, I said. I don't expect us to be best friends or anything. But maybe we could get coffee sometime? I'd like to hear about New Zealand. And I promised to pay for my own drink. I surprised myself by laughing. Yeah, okay. Coffee sounds good. We met the following week at a place near her apartment. She looked different, thinner, tired, but more alert somehow. More present. She told me about her job, about her nightmare roommate in the apartment next door, about how she was saving up to take a community college course in graphic design. I think I might actually be good at something, she said, showing me sketches on her phone. I've been doing these at night, after work. It's the first time I've felt excited about anything in years. Her designs were actually impressive, bold colors and clean lines that showed real talent. These are great, Brielle. You should absolutely pursue this. You really think so? You're not just saying that? I'm not. You have an eye for this. I paused, considering my next words carefully. There's a design firm in my building. They sometimes take on interns. If you're serious about this, I could put in a word. Her eyes went wide. You'd do that for me? After everything? I'd do it for the person you're becoming, not the person you were. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I swear. She didn't. 3 months later, she was working part-time at the design firm while finishing her coursework. The supervisor told me Brielle was one of their most dedicated interns, always the first to arrive and the last to leave. I barely recognized the description as my sister. A year after the canceled trip, my parents insisted on taking me to dinner for my birthday. They'd been doing better, attending therapy, treating me with genuine respect, giving Brielle tough love when she needed it. The restaurant they chose was nice but not extravagant, well within their budget. After the meal, Gerald slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for the full amount they'd spent on the flight changes and the portion of the trip they'd managed to salvage. We know we've been paying monthly, Lorraine said, but we wanted to settle the debt completely. Gerald picked up some overtime shifts, and I've been doing bookkeeping on the side. It's not enough to make up for what we did, but it's a start. I stared at the check, my throat tight. You didn't have to do this all at once. We did, though. We owed you more than money, but money was something concrete we could give back. I folded the check and put it in my purse. Thank you. This means a lot. There's something else, Gerald said. He pulled out a second, smaller envelope. We can't give you back the trip we ruined, but we wanted to contribute to your next one. It's not much, but maybe it'll cover a nice dinner or a show. Inside was $500 in cash. I looked up at them, at their hopeful, anxious faces, and felt the last bit of ice around my heart begin to thaw. "I'm planning a trip to Japan in the spring," I said slowly. "Would you want to come with me? For real this time, just the three of us. I'll handle the planning, but we'll split the costs fairly." Lorraine's face crumpled as she started crying. Gerald cleared his throat roughly, looking away. "We'd love that," he managed. "We'd really love that." This time, when we went to the airport, nobody got replaced. The three of us boarded the plane to Tokyo together, and my parents treated every moment like the gift it was. They thanked me constantly, insisted on paying for meals, and actually listened when I talked about the research I'd done on temples and gardens. On our last night in Kyoto, we had dinner at a traditional restaurant overlooking a koi pond. Paper lanterns swayed in the breeze, casting dancing shadows across the water. "I'm glad we're here," Lorraine said quietly. "Together. The right way." "Me too," I said. And I meant it. The path to forgiveness had been longer and harder than any of us anticipated. But standing in that garden, watching the lanterns drift across the water, I understood that some things were worth fighting for. Not the relationship we'd had before, that was broken beyond repair. But the relationship we were building now, founded on honesty and mutual respect, was something better. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I stood in that airport a year ago, watching my family betray me. But it was the ending we'd all earned through hard work, accountability, and the courage to change. And somehow, that made it perfect.